Welcome to part 2 of my Fatui Harbinger series, where today we actually need to divide this video into 2 parts. Because there's kind of a lot to talk about regarding Dottore as a character, and also just some other stuff I want to talk about briefly before I get into him. So, yeah. The first thing I want to talk about is the current state of the player base when it comes to the Fatui. Now, this is not referring to all of the players. However, God, the amount of times I hear this and it's just starting to piss me off is kind of insane. So I'm gonna give my thoughts on it, even though I am probably going to get raked over hot coals. So, a lot of people don't like the way the Fatui Harbingers are being portrayed, saying that they are not evil enough, and how they're being waifuified, uwuified, and softboyified, when in reality, that's not really the case. I kind of see it a little bit for Columbina, but we'll talk about her next month. And I do see a little bit how some of them aren't living up to a lot of the expectations that were provided, but here's the thing. A lot of their pre-introduction selves, even post-Winter Nights Lazo, but pre-in-game appearances, are purely based on fan headcanons from Tartaglia, mostly, and as I said in Capitano's video, he is kind of unreliable when it comes to talking about his coworkers. But because of the way they're being portrayed, a lot of people are now believing that they are being rewritten as an organization, and they're not actually going to be the final boss big bads, to which I say, they never were supposed to be to begin with! I very much get how they come off that way, given they have their hands in everything. They have their hands in Tevat's politics, Tevat's economy. If it exists in Tevat, chances are the Fatui have their hands in it, along with their mission of collecting all the Gnosises. Now, we don't fully know what that's about, but we can guess that it has something to do with Project Stuja, which was first mentioned in Arlecchino's story quest. And though we don't really know all of what Project Stuja entails, I have my theories, but I would have to make a completely separate video on that, and I might. But essentially, if you didn't know, now you know, but you probably might have known if you actually pay attention to the lore, the Gnosises are made out of some of the body parts of the third Descender. So, presumably, their plan in Project Stuja has something to do with reviving the third Descender. And to be considered a Descender, you have to have power that rivals that of the gods. So, between that and the Abyss Order trying to revive Conria, I think the actual final boss is going to be Celestia. And I think it was always sort of kind of intended to be Celestia based off of our conversation with our sibling at the end of the We Shall Be Reunited interlude quest. And when I say Celestia, I more accurately mean the primordial one, / heavenly principles. Now, I will not deny that there could be some rewriting going on with the Fatui and just kind of the game in general, but we will talk about that more next month. However, as it stands, I do not think the Fatui were ever intended to be 100% evil or even the main antagonists of the game. I believe they were meant to be the sub-antagonists before we get to the actual main antagonists. I will agree that some of them are being portrayed in a way that none of us expected and could honestly be detrimental to a lot of them. However, I do not think Dottore is going to be one of them. I would like to make it known before we get much further that I am a little bit behind on the lore, so some of the things I'm about to talk about may very well be outdated. So, I was originally going to talk about Dottore's name, or the speculations regarding his identity as the mad scholar Zandik, who was expelled from the Sumeru Academia some 500 years ago. However, apparently that's canon now. I had a whole mental presentation laid out about why I believe this theory, but I guess we can technically pivot and talk about the origins of that theory and how it kind of became canon now, I guess. Now, I will say, I don't know the full origins of how it became the theory to begin with. I didn't start playing until about 2.5 or 2.6. And overall, I still don't really interact with the fandom as much as some other people do, so I don't know the full origins. However, this is how I think the theory came to be. The first time we hear about Dottore in-game is during Tartaglia's story quest, which came out in version 1.1, in which we learn from our favorite unreliable narrator Tartaglia that Dottore has a personal passion for tinkering with old machinery, a trait I do think they kind of sort of ended up dropping and giving to Sandrone, but we'll talk about that some other time when we locate his old Ruin Guard lab in Liyue. Fast forward to version 1.5, which even now is regarded as being one of the most lore-heavy patches in the entire game, introduced us to the Pale Flame artifact set. Each piece within this artifact set tells the story of one of 5 different members of the Fatui Harbingers. And for Dottore's story, we turn to the feather/plume of death for this particular set, known as Wise Doctor's Pinion. I shall read the description for you now. A human is nothing more than a machine of a certain level of complexity, thus declared the youth from his lectern in the seedbed of wisdom. If one were to disassemble a part of this machine and make enhancements to it, its performance could be greatly amplified, with or without a vision, and irrespective of their physique or combat skills. Enhanced humans would surely display strength far beyond the average. Despite the risk of being denounced as a heretic and permanently cast from the circle of the wise, the youth candidly jotted down these thoughts in the margins of his research notes. 1. As anticipated, no research breakthroughs are possible given the work and style of the academia. 2. Nevertheless, being expelled would be a loss. One needs an environment conducive to research. Following a trail of rumors of heresy, the first of the Fatui tracked him down. Merely an enhanced human? If your great nation can furnish me with sufficient resources and ample time, I could even manufacture that of which you would call a god. What say you? In the desert that shone bright like liquid gold, he inquired the Snezhnayan diplomat. Will you treat me like the academia did? Will you call me a monster, a madman? Or will you treat me as my hometown did and chase me away with pitchforks and clubs? However, good, then we are now in partnership. As for the matter of your title, what do you think of this? Taken completely by surprise by the sheer irony of the title given, the young man burst into hysterical laughter. Yes, I pulled that straight off the wiki. Following that, Dottore's first actual in-game appearance, not in-universe, in-game appearance would happen during Act 3 of the Sumeru Archon quest, when he hijacks the Akasha terminals of the people in Sumeru City. However, it was after this where speculations about his identity sort of split. For you see, in Interlude Chapter, Act 3, in version of Genesis, specifically, the night birds fall at the curtain call, that is a mouthful. We see that at some point in history, likely when he went to go get Scaramouche from Tatarasuna Island, he disguised himself as a Fontanian man named Escher. Well, okay, we assume he's Fontanian because of the outfit he's wearing being pretty uniform with what we saw other Fontanian NPCs wearing pre-Fontaine's release. So that led some people to believe that he was actually a Fontanian man who had simply attended the Sumeru Academia. Now, the evidence pertaining to this having possibly been his identity was all released in version 3.3, which is partly why I don't think as many people caught on to the idea of this being his identity as compared to Zandig, who we had records to in various research notes since 3.0. And then there was also just the incredibly small group of people who thought he was probably just going to end up being some random dude. Now, with all of that being said, we can get into the meat of what the series is technically supposed to be about, though I might make more of their videos sort of like this in the future, comparing their fanon and canon selves. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like his fanon selves are a little all over the place. You have the ones that are super crazy and insane. You have the ones that are actually relatively sane. You have the ones that are a pretty reasonable middle ground. You have the ones that are almost written as blank slates, and then you have the ones that are written surprisingly well and somewhat detailed, all things considered. And then you also have whoever he's being casted alongside playing a part in how he's being portrayed as well. When interacting with Wanderer, you get a lot more of that crazy, insane Dottore as compared to, let's say Pantalone, where he still has some insane tendencies, but he's a bit more sane, if that makes sense. If we really think about it, linking him back to Zandig, I think part of why he experimented on Scaramouche as much as he did is because of the fact that he was built to be an artificial god, and part of his mission was to create an artificial god. Does that excuse his actions? No. Does it justify them in the context of the lore at least a little bit? Yeah, I say very hesitantly as to not get raked over hot coals. Actually, on the note of comparing the fanon to the canon and also wanting to circle back more to the Zandig stuff a little bit, people often write him as if he is a medical doctor. Which, I mean, I do kind of understand why. His codename is the Doctor, and he's done enough experiments on people, that I understand why people do think that he is a medical doctor. However, I think doctor, in this case, technically just refers to somebody who has a PhD degree, because that's what a PhD is technically. It's a doctorate degree. And based on the various notes about Zandig and from Zandig scattered around Sumeru and what we've heard of him from the other Harbingers, as unreliable as some of them are, he's not a medical doctor. He took interest in machinery and technology, and we don't know what darshan he studied in, but if I had to put my hat in the ring with a guess, I'd guess he was a Kasharawar scholar, because they primarily study technology, though I also wouldn't be surprised if he snuck into the lectures of a couple other darshans. And I'm also not saying that he has no medical knowledge. He ran some relatively unethical medical experiments, and it's also important to remember that he is also centuries old, so it is possible that he got bored with just technology somewhere along the line and decided, screw it, let's do some medical shit too. And actually, on the note of his age, I feel it is important to note that he was actually born after the Cataclysm. So, unlike Capitano, where for him you would say he is at least 500 years old, or I guess was, because he's kind of sort of dead, you know? Dottore would actually be, he is at max 500 years old. Give or take a few years, because, like, at this point, I'm pretty sure 500 years is just, like, a rough estimate. Because, like, time has definitely passed since we've been into that. Like, I don't want to go too far into this rant, but time has definitely passed. So for all we know, the Cataclysm could have happened 495 years ago or 505 years ago, and we're just rounding either up or down to the nearest 10. But yes, so Dottore is at max 500 years old. Again, give or take. We know this because throughout some of the notes we find talking about Zandig and specifically the research group he was out with, we find out that one of them, an Amortia scholar, was collecting samples of plants affected by the withering. Now, this particular member of the field research team was presumably murdered, and said murder might be linked to Zandig's expulsion from the Sumeru Academia. Because here's the thing, we don't actually fully know why he was expelled, and then, of course, banished to the desert, but we can make some educated guesses based on the evidence we have. The first and likely most obvious one is heresy. However, in this situation, him being a heretic doesn't refer to him not worshipping Lesser Lord Kusanali, aka Nahida, because at that time, no one really liked her. Or at least the people didn't really see her as being their god, because, you know, they had her locked up for centuries. So I think within the context of Genshin, and especially when referring to Dottore, being regarded as a heretic more comes from disregarding the natural order of Tevat, and more specifically the heavenly principles, and possibly even the four shades. Looking at you, Renova. There was also apparently a series of infractions where he acted in pursuit of his research without authorization from the academia, and then also the fact that he is suspected of the murder of that one Amortia scholar I mentioned earlier. Anyway, I don't want to drag this out for much longer, so let's get into the final question that I will be asking throughout the series. Do I think they were introduced at the right time, or do I think they should have been introduced somewhere else? And for Dottore, I'm actually going to say he was introduced at the perfect time, because here's the thing. He was actually the first Harbinger ever introduced within the Genshin universe. Because back in 2018, as early production promotion for the game, Hoyoverse released a Genshin Impact webcomic, and Dottore appeared in the webcomic. Here he is now. As you can see, very different from his in-game counterpart, visually speaking. That is also often the one most people say is beta. However, I don't call that one beta. I think beta is one of the Crow Mask ones that we've seen in the game. That one is a Webby. However, one interesting detail you probably wouldn't really notice unless you are truly paying attention is that the spelling of Dottore is actually different between the game and the webcomic. In the game, his name is spelled D-O-T-T-O-R-E. However, in the webcomic, it's D-O-T-O-R-R-E. So the original double R's got switched out for double T's, which I believe is technically the correct way to spell it. Now, do I think he appeared at the right time in the game itself? Also yes, because he appeared in Sumeru. Now knowing his identity is that of Zandig, he has a lot of ties to Sumeru. Him being from there and him appearing there just makes sense. As for his appearance in Nod Cry, I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I haven't been able to play through that part of the Archon quest yet. I haven't had the time. But I will say this, a lot of people do think that he is dead for real this time. I don't think he is. Because here's the thing. Even though Nahida told him to kill off his segments if he wanted the Dendronosis, we only saw, 8 last I counted, of them actually die there. And there's the possibility that he had dozens, so it is possible that he lied to her and only killed 8 out of possible dozens. On top of that, it is possible that he just went and made more. Because I honestly doubt, with how much Hoyoverse has built this man up, they would kill him off without having a secondary plan on a way to make him playable. Yes, they killed off Senora. Yes, they killed off Capitano, 2 other characters that were highly sought after by fans, and we will talk about Senora down the line. However, I think in the case of Dottore, because he has segments of himself, they wouldn't kill him off without leaving the possibility of him being playable on the table. Whether it be through a remaining segment, if the boss fight Dottore was the real, actual, original Dottore, or the original Dottore if the boss fight was a segment. I personally think he was a segment. I don't think Dottore is stupid enough to risk his own life and immortality for an experiment he didn't even know if it would work or not. Anyway, that will about wrap up this video. I could have very well easily made this thing like 30 minutes. I have a lot to talk about when it comes to this guy, but I'm capping it here because any longer and I'd have to divide it into even more parts for the clock app than I'm already gonna have to. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave your thoughts in the comments.